chosen to spend your time with us. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement and then I will introduce our panel. My name is Dr. Paula C. Perez. I'm an author, educator, speaker, and coach, and it is my honor to have put together this panel for you on this evening. At the end of this evening, we're going to do a breakout, so I pray that you will stick around and become a part of the conversation. So let's start with our program. As we gather for this If Only You Knew event for New Paltz, New York, let us first acknowledge the ancestral lands on which we stand. We recognize with respect and gratitude the Munsee, Lenape, and the Wappingers peoples, who were original stewards of this land. Their wisdom, resilience, and connection to the earth have left an indelible mark on this place. As educators of color, we honor their legacy by amplifying diverse voices, fostering inclusivity, and nurturing the next generation with love and understanding. May we continue to learn, grow, and advocate for justice in our communities, guided by the spirit of reconciliation and mutual respect. And now let me introduce our panelists for this evening. Our first speaker is Cara Breitenbach, a dedicated advocate for children's development, champions diversity, education, and inclusion. With extensive experience in nurturing young minds, she passionately believes in every child's capacity to learn and excel. She teaches the whole child, promoting social justice and empowerment. Beyond co founding and presiding over future teachers of color here at SUNY New Paltz, Cara serves on various boards, amplifying student voices. Engaged in campus activism, she contributes to the Black Lives Matter collective and co led the Sound Your Truth event. Eager to continue learning from experiences in wiser minds, Cara embodies a commitment to guiding students' holistic growth and success. Maya Leslie is in her junior year of studying early childhood and childhood education with a concentration in Black Studies at SUNY New Paltz. She is the president of a club on campus called Future Teachers of Color, which aims to create a space where students of color can be their authentic selves, while also building a community of teacher education students of color and allies at SUNY New Paltz. She is extremely passionate about education as a whole, but specifically teaching children. Okay, let's bring up a couple more of you. We have with us on this evening Ms. Janacia James. She is a SUNY New Paltz alumni with a Bachelor of Science in Birth through Six Early Childhood Education with an English concentration. She has worked with the New York State Master Teacher Program and SUNY New Paltz STEP program throughout her academic career. She's an up and coming educator that is striving to have social emotional learning as the foundation of the student learning experience. She's currently a preschool educator who values the work of early childhood educators who help to build students' learning experiences and a love for school every day. Dr. Danielle Point du Jour is our next panelist. She is currently an assistant principal in the Bronx, New York. Her research is in teacher preparation, improvement, and the critical role that school leaders play in building and sustaining effective PLCs. Dr. Point du Jour has been spotlighted for her leadership. She has taken the role of chair for E4E, New York's Women of Color in Education Committee, and will now lead a space to champion pathways for leadership and mentorship for BIPOC educators. Dr. Point du Jour's passion and mission is to provide multiple pathways to student success through teacher improvement and mentorship. And finally, on this evening, our facilitator for today is Miss Angela Armstrong. And Miss Angela is the Director of Recruitment, Retention, and Equity for the Kingston City School District. The goals of her current job are to increase the number of educators of color in the district and to develop support systems for retention of employees of color. Ms. Armstrong has been an adjunct professor for the Black Studies Department at SUNY New Paltz, a high school and middle school assistant principal, and a special education teacher. She's embarking on her 38th year of education.
40.
Oh, 40. Goodness gracious. She didn't update her bio. 40 years in education. Ms. Armstrong holds a BA in education from Michigan State University and a MA in human resource development from American International College and a certificate of gifted studies in educational leadership from Massachusetts College for Liberal Arts. Her ultimate passion has always been to do whatever she can to improve the lives and the quality of education for our children. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our panel for this evening. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Armstrong.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming and having interest enough to be here to share with us. The theme of this discussion derived from a larger discussion that took place with our larger group of educators of color. The Educator of Color Network was formed to provide a space where educators of color from any location could meet for discussion, guidance, and support in a safe space of non judgment. Tonight, with the help of our panel, we are going to allow you to eavesdrop on the topics, concerns, and insights we often share, keeping with the theme, If Only You Knew. This discussion will provide insights into our thoughts, concerns, and experiences in hopes that you, the audience, will feel and glean something that you can use to improve upon and enhance the experiences of both educators and students of color. So, with that said, we're going to jump right in. So, what we did is we had a conversation about things we wanted educators to know from our experiences, hence the theme, If Only You Knew. So, I'm going to jump right in. And the first one is, if only you knew the importance of educators of color. Are there panelists who would like to speak on that? We'll start with Cara.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So this question is very personal to me because I can not only personally relate to it, but as a person of color who has not fully been embraced by her identity, to have educators of color in front of the classroom has been life-changing for me. To have mentors who look like me has been life-changing. As we know, academic engagement and success of students of color in K through 12 schools increases in a huge amount when there are teachers of color in front of the classroom. And this is partially because students of color comprise over 50% of the national public school student population. After all, you can't be what you don't see. And when you have a teacher who is there, who shares experiences, who walks around in a world, who sorry, who walks around and sees you and understands you without you being someone who has to explain it is amazing. Anybody can relate to being seen and understood, and that's all we ever want. But it goes on a deeper level. Personally, for me, as somebody who was adopted, and my family was white, and that was my culture and my customs. And so I hid who I was. For as much as it was to myself. I hid it to my from myself as long as I could, and it wasn't until that and it wasn't until I was surrounded by people of color. It wasn't until I joined the Black Studies program at SUNY New Paltz that I finally found myself and felt comfortable to be who I always was, but never realized I could be.
Someone else want to share the importance of educators of color? Janacia?
Hi, everyone. Yes, following up from what Cara said, students of color have a better academic outcome when they do see their counterparts reflected in the classroom. It's proven in the research, as well as teachers of color impact and challenge the status quo of racism as a whole and prepare students to live in a multicultural society. That's where that intellect of social emotional learning comes from to help them navigate in a world that may not have systematically been welcoming to them. And being taught by teachers of color offers so many benefits, not only academically, but emotionally. And the familiarity of having someone that may look like them, as well as the family that they are leaving at home each and every day. It gives them and it creates that sense of belonging. And for personal experiences, having women of color in front of the classroom, before moving upstate, seeing teacher of color in the classroom and then transferring upstate to going from high school and having my first teacher of color being in SUNY New Paltz. That was a transition for me that I longed for during that gap of, I would say, 5 to 6 years without seeing another educator of color. It really does show the impact of it because I realized as a high school student to a college student having a educator of color, it left more of an impact on me. It allowed me to become more successful. And I agree full-heartedly that it allows your students, again, to achieve what needs to be achieved. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else from the panel want to speak on this topic before I move on? The importance of educators of color. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. So I'll piggyback off of what Janacia and Cara said, because being a woman of color who went through the Department of Education and the DOE K through 12, having that teacher that I could relate to or look to and see those similarities and aspire to be like. It made me feel as a student that I could achieve anything. And the cultural rituals that were, that I was accustomed to, I was able to connect with my teachers of color because they got it. They understood me. And it wasn't far off to achieve a higher education degree, So I want to say, and then being a teacher, I could recall myself being my Mrs. Harris when she was walking through the middle school and getting us straight in line, right? Miss Harris made sure that safety and security was the thing. And now as an administrator, being that woman of color in the hallway where I can present to my students of color, because that's my population, having that familiarity and that just students looking at me like auntie one day, mom one day, it makes a difference in creating these safe spaces that we want our students to, feel a belonging to school. And I think a lot of that has to do with being able to see themselves in us. So everything that they said in addition to that.
Thank
I
you.
would also like to add, in my personal experience, I did not have a teacher or educator of color until I came to SUNY New Paltz. And it brought a lot of shock to me the way that it affected me, because I had gone my whole life really not thinking about the ways that I was being educated. And so at New Paltz, I was able to not only find peace in like myself, but also my identity in the way that I was walking through the halls, just feeling more of myself and feeling more comfortable culturally as well. It really just opened my eyes to the possibilities of what I can be involved in and the connections that I can make because I was able to have that representation in a classroom. It made me fall back in love with going to school, which I think is a really powerful thing. Um, just helping children to learn, to love learning. And by having representation in a classroom, that's a really key factor.
Thank you. So we're going to move on. We're going to get a little deeper. So I hope you're ready. The next one is if only you knew the number of microaggressions we face. Who would like to start that one?
So I'll go first. For me, quickly I identified I was a career changer that never changed careers. So I got into the school to teaching later on. I want to say my late 30s, and I started to notice that it was the setting was dominated by people that were not of color, and how I had to push my way into classrooms because I wanted to be a part of the community, and how sometimes systems are put into place to kind of exclude people of color. And I felt that, I mean, I learned a lot because I made a statement when I felt othered in a meeting. Like the meeting was happening and I was there, but it was no suggestions. What do you think at the time, Miss, Point du jour, can you add something? Can you collaborate? Do you want to bring in experience? It was none of that. It was that isolated teachers like thing that happens when everything is in silos. So I had to knock on doors and almost push doors open to be taken seriously, as if I had a place in that building. But I also learned that closed mouths don't get fed. So I had to say I want to be a part of it. So it's like what I tell my teachers now as an administrator, don't always look for the professional development to be handed to you or to be told to you. You have to seek it out for yourself, your growth and what things you need. And in that, like I said, in that space where I felt isolated, I had to open up my mouth and I had to communicate my needs and what I could bring and show up, be present, and not allow sometimes that feeling of not belonging kind of make me not want to speak up, not to participate or co-plan. So it was a learning curve for myself. Like I said, as a late comer to me into the business, I felt like my voice wasn't heard, nor what did it want to be heard. But I had to push myself out there to be taken seriously. So those are the microaggressions. Like, oh, you're here, you know.
Kind of let you into the room, but not make you part of it. Got it. Kara, you want to speak on it?
Yes. So as like I mentioned before, being adopted and being in a white family, I constantly felt like I had to prove myself. And as I went out into the world on my own, and started discovering who I was and who I wanted to be, I realized I had faced microaggressions my entire life and just been blind to them. And what that had done, and I didn't even realize, was it had broken me down. It made it really hard for me to accept being a person of color. It made it hard for me to have relationships with people of color because I just tried to separate, because I felt like by associating, by accepting being a person of color, that I then was less than, because that is what society portrays. That is, when I nannied in the city, it was because I loved it, because I loved working with kids. But people saw it as like, that's the only thing you can do, right? You're Spanish, and that's you're motherly, and of course that's your job. Or I show up and they think I'm the cleaning lady. It's always constantly having to prove who you are, to the point that you're also proving it to yourself, that you lose yourself. And that kind of goes into the third question about impacting your health. It was a big detriment to my health. And I would say I had an identity crisis. And in a way, that was almost what needed to happen for me to wake up and really embrace who I was and accept that I wasn't less than, that I deserved to be in the room, and that that is what microaggressions can do. And one by one, okay, you can deal with it, but it's what they collectively bring to your health and to your identity.
Thank you. Maya, you want to jump in there?
Yeah,
Talk
absolutely.
about,
I would love to piggyback off of that. I think that for me personally, I think that I have had such a journey of always feeling like I had to prove myself as a person of color. Being mixed, I feel that people have always kind of written it down to you can't be both. You either have to pick black or white. And so I had a hard time navigating that for a long time because I thought I had to be one or the other when in reality I absolutely didn't. But for so long of my life, people would label me as white. They would say, "You talk so white, you act white," um, which is not a thing. But it was so frustrating because I felt, because of my skin tone and because my appearance reflects me being black, I struggled with expressing that part of my identity. But also, I grew up knowing the white American culture. And so navigating that and figuring that out, but also having people try and what I thought of it as was diminishing my identity because they wanted me to fit into a box that I didn't fit in. And so microaggressions are like kind of what Cara said. It's one by one. It's something like, oh, sometimes you can brush it off off your shoulder, but when they ball up into this kind of just this cloud over your head of questioning yourself, not being sure of where you stand, that's really detrimental to not only your health but also your mental health. So I think it's really important that we as educators are not only calling out microaggressions, but addressing them, trying to unpack what do you mean when you say that? Is it because you think black is bad, or is it because society has constructed this idea of black people in a negative light?
before I go to Janacia, I don't want to assume everybody knows what a microaggression is. So I'm going to give you a definition. I probably should have started there. Um, I'm going to give you a definition. A statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic minority. And please know what makes microaggressions so egregious to us is that they are very constant. They happen all the time. It's not a singular event, it's perpetual. So I just wanted to fill you in, didn't want to assume. Janacia?
Thank you. Yes, like what was said, it takes away, it tries to take away a person's validation of self. That's how I view it. And like you said, it's something that occurs on a daily basis, whether we know it or not. Some microaggressions will hit you right there in your heart, and some will just fly past you. I'll give an experience of myself, something that um, occurred during my first couple weeks of teaching. I'm kind of coming in, I wouldn't say as a leave replacement, but the teacher just decided to do another career change. And I'm coming in after a non woman of color. So there's a lot of things that I was told that I was expected to do that would reflect her form as an educator. And that's just something that wasn't comfortable to me. Where we had to adapt new routines, something that I felt that would help the development of the children, especially at this point of the school year. And with my support at the time, when I would give directions, there was always a backlash. There was always, why do we have to do that? Why are we doing this? And this was someone that was supposed to be an assistant of myself. So I found myself coming home a lot of nights wondering if I'm meant to be here. Am I living up to my potential? And it took me one time to realize that some of these things are microaggressions, not only because of who I am, a woman of color, but my age as well. That in some rooms I'm told, oh, you're very mature for your age, where I don't understand what that means. If I have the credentials and I am educated, then I'm supposed to be here just like anyone else. So I experienced that a lot. And that's something that I used to think, oh, they don't know what they're saying. You know, maybe they're seeing it as a compliment. But at this point of my life and early in my career, I am starting to see it as microaggressions, because if I have to come home every night wondering, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? And what are you trying to imply? Then it is definitely for a fact a microaggression. So with that being said, it tries to take away a person's validation. And one thing, if I could share with anyone, do not let it take away your why, do not take away your validation, and just know that the confidence that you're bringing is the reason why that microaggression is coming across, because they see you as a threat. And that's what I tell myself every day on a day-to-day basis, because microaggressions will find you in any way.
Thank you very much. I had a teacher who was assigned a mentor, and she was Hispanic, and her last name had 4 syllables. And the day she met her mentor, the first thing the mentor said to her is, and she was a preschool teacher, and the first thing her mentor said to her was, "Your name is too hard to say, so I'm just going to call you Miss C." So I said to the teacher, I said, "Well, you teach preschool." I said, can your kids say your name?" And she said, "Every single one of them." Does anybody else have any more examples, specific example of microaggressions? Because microaggressions they're repetitive.
Oh boy. So looks like we have lost Miss Angela, but carry on with Angela. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, your signal is really weak and you're dropping.
And I don't know what to do or why, but we're going to keep moving.
Yes.
So I will
Thank
say
you.
a microaggression that I faced as I was finishing up my doctoral work. I heard, "Oh, I know you know the book knowledge," from my male counterpart, non-color, things in the vein of like, "Yeah, you know the book stuff, but so in other words, I don't know the practical, or I'm not capable of being an assistant principal." During my first like 3 months of the transition into leadership outside of the classroom. And it was like, wait a minute, we're in a school building and we always tell students to learn. We tell our scholars that, just seek knowledge. And so here I am, and I'm being kind of like ostracized because I have a higher degree or education level than my peer or principal. And it was like, okay, what are we doing here? We're telling students to learn. I'm in school. I'm a forever. I like to learn. So I'm going for my doctorate, and it's still this thing because I'm a woman of color and the only woman of color that was on admin at in that team. So I found that very, disrespectful, because it was like, okay, what I'm learning. Yes, I know the book knowledge, but all of that information that I've learned from a child into adulthood, into being a mom, you bring that with you. You bring the experiences, you bring that passion, you bring that joy with you into the work that we do. So to say like, "Oh yeah, you're smart," but so yeah, that was one of the biggest ones, because that was for me. It wasn't a pay increase, it was for me to say, "You know what? woman of color, Black woman from South Side, Jamaica, Queens, you can have the highest education there is to have in this field. You can do it. So that was something I had to pump myself up every day and remind myself of the why. Meanwhile, my counterpart was telling me, like, oh, you're smart, but it's always a but. Instead of just saying, I applaud you, you're working, you're doing this. So that was very aggressive. And it was a day to day. If it wasn't one attacking me, it was the other. And it was little jabs like that, as if I didn't know what you were saying.
I also want to add to this that it's not only the teachers of color who are experiencing microaggressions, it's also the students. So a lot of times when I go around and talk to our educators of color in our district, their frustration comes out in them explaining to me experiences of how they see others interact with our kids. I don't know if you guys have any specific examples of that, but I definitely want you to make that connection. That if you do it to adults, the kids, you're probably doing it to kids as well. And it could be something as simple as you never say their name correctly, and you don't try to, and you expect them to adopt to you. So, Kara, do you have an example of how you see kids experience a microaggression?
Yes, well, I bring up the point. So I'm student teaching currently, and there is very few students of color, but one of the young ladies who is in my class is a very smart Black girl, but she normally wore her hair very natural, and then the next day she came in and she had it straightened and was teased by the boys and said, "Your hair is fake. It looks fake. Is it a wig?" And these are the kind of microaggressions that start from a very young age, and they don't stop. And as educators, whether you're an educator of color or an ally or not, that is the time. That is why it's so important. That is when you begin that hard work and lay the groundwork that this is not okay. Not only to the boys who said it to her and why it's not okay, but to the young lady, and that, like, you don't have to stand for this. It is okay, because she didn't even tell us. She went home and told her parents, who then emailed us and told us that this had happened the day before. So you not only want to create a safe space where your students can come to you, but also for that to teach them how to advocate for themselves. Because as a person of color, you're going to have to advocate for yourself your entire life.
Thank you so much. Good. Anybody else before I move on? I don't want to cut anyone off. Okay, so I want to add one of our questions was we wanted you to know how microaggressions impact our health, but I would say that you should be able to glean from what people have already said that microaggressions have a big effect on our social emotional health. And I think that that's coming through as you listen to our panelists. So I'm going to go to the next If Only You Knew topic. And this is If Only You Knew How It Feels to Be the Only One. And I'm going to start with Kara.
So, like I said, I was adopted. My family has always been supportive. They've always tried to do the hard work to make me feel accepted, to make me understand my roots. But it's not the same as having people of color surrounding you. So for my entire life, I've always felt like the only one, and I created that for myself. Like I said, because of how society portrays people of color. Then I go into my student teaching, and I know, well, let me backtrack. Before I started student teaching at SUNY New Paltz, I started becoming really involved with the Black Studies department. I started having professors of color, and things started to change. I started understanding my identity. I started finding who I was, and I started finding my strength. Then I start student teaching. And once again, I know that I'm going to be one of the only ones. So sure enough, I come to a elementary school. I'm so excited because I finally feel like this is where I belong, because I was starting to doubt myself at the end. Like, can I really do this? You know, because it is teaching is a thankless job, but it is the most rewarding job. And so I go in, and sure enough, there's no teachers of color that I can see. The next, and I also have to think, when you student teach, you're also thinking about, like, can I work in this space, or what space would I want to work in? So the next day, lo and behold, I see a teacher of color. Funny enough, she actually is from SUNY New Paltz, but it felt to feel not alone anymore, to again connect with somebody who instantly I was like, I don't even have to explain to you. I don't have to teach you. I don't have to, we can just look at each other and just know. And later on, we have become friends. I spoke with her, and she was felt the exact same way when she saw me, because she has been the only teacher of color in that school now for a while. And so, how it feels to be the only one, it feels lonely. And how it feels not to be, it feels amazing. It feels like you have support. It feels like you have strength. And it feels like you have the world to help on your side, which is how you don't feel your entire life.
I just want to add that when I worked in Massachusetts, there was a 6-year period when I was the only teacher of color in the district. So think about the fact that you can have whole districts um, without teachers of color. And I was a special education teacher, which meant I didn't even, I wasn't encouraging kids to come into my room. And one time when I was taught in Michigan, I had this student who would come in my room and say, "Miss Armstrong, I want to be in your room." And I was like, "You don't want to be in my room. You're doing well. I want you to stay where you are." "No, Miss Armstrong, I want to be in your room." He says, "And I'm going to be bad just so I can come into your room." And I was like, "Boy, don't even think don't even think about it." But what it does is it speaks to their need to be able to see someone reflected back in themselves. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to do 2 more questions because we're planning to do breakout rooms. So the next, if only you knew, is how hard it was to get here. Who wants to speak on that? If only you knew how hard it was to get here. Janacia?
Yes, I love this question. It's very hard. And I'm just going to start off with I love SUNY New Paltz. I love our educational department. They're very supportive, but it is predominantly white. Everywhere from the students to the faculty, it is predominantly white. Not saying you don't have allies, because there are allies that will testify for us and say the same exact thing that I'm saying as well. But it's extremely hard going in. And for example, when we are talking about diverse literature for students, when you're reading a lot of these stories, I remember one course, when you're reading these stories, you have some students that get it. They get the message, they get the mission, they get why this needs to be a part of our why teaching these children, these selection of books. Then you have some that, what does this have to do with me? Why are we reading this? And I literally say this to you because these are conversations that happen, when the professor is gone and we're able to socialize amongst each other. So to go back to saying that, it can be very hard to get to where you're going because of the limitation of being able to communicate with your peers, because again, we are learning from each other. We're all here to do the same thing, and it's to get your degree so you can go teach, so you can be whatever you want to be, and to not limit yourself. But when you have, for example, in that setting, classmates that limit you, classmates that may not reflect to your why, it's hard. Or the lack of support in that representation. It goes back to everything that we've been saying throughout this panel. When you don't have a person that represents you to validate you, to tell you the next day is going to get better, to tell you, don't worry about that, just keep working hard, have that confidence, have that resilience. It can be very challenging. So again, from that social emotional aspect, I think of that because I remember living with that, wondering if this is meant for me. Will education welcome me with open arms? Also, being a girl from the Bronx, will my counterparts understand where I'm coming from if I'm not using certain academia words to express myself? Can I really be that person that I need to be? So it's hard, but it's worth it. It's worth the work.
So
Maya, I
can
know
I
you
jump in
wanted,
here?
uh,
No, go ahead, Maya.
Maya, I know that you wanted to speak on this subject. If only you knew how hard it was to get here.
Yes, I do. It's a little hard for me to say that it was hard because when I look at my life and where I am today, I see a lot of privilege. I have been awarded a lot of privilege in my life. And so when I say it's hard, I don't mean that the whole world was against me, but I mean that it's it's hard to do the little things. It's hard to sit in a classroom and be the only person of color. It's hard to find support in a department that is predominantly white. And I think that it's it's really important for us to acknowledge the fact that everyone's journey is so different and we're all coming from such different parts of life that different things are hard for different people, if that makes sense. um and I think that one of the hardest one of the hardest parts of my education was I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was going to college. I've always loved working with children. I used to pretend to teach. We used to do it before
Mhm.
school. We used to set up our own little classroom, but I never was committed to the idea that I wanted to be a teacher. And I think that one of the reasons why is because I didn't want to be like the teachers that I had. I didn't want to I didn't want to teach children the way that I was taught in that kind of way. So it took me a long time to realize that I can be a teacher, I can be whatever kind of teacher I want, really. And I think that was my main obstacle of just finding like honing in on like what I love. And I love children, I love to teach, and I love education. And to be able to come to that realization coming to New Paltz has really just set the tone for me and my experiences here. And one thing that I will say has made it so much easier is having that support system. And for me, my support system right now is, well, I have a lot of support systems, but one of my main systems right now is my club, Future Teachers of Color. And it is an amazing, amazing group of students at SUNY New Paltz who have come together and become, we bounce ideas off of each other. We create events that are centered around us and what we want and what we need in a classroom. And so I think that while everything is real, while it is hard, I think it is really important to acknowledge the fact that we can do it. And there's people who are going to support you along the way, and your community is what's going to lift you up in all aspects of your life.
Dr. Point du jour, I'm going to ask you if you'll answer the next question because of time. If only you knew doing nothing still doesn't help.
So, so I guess when you think about what, when you walk into the classroom, what that experience is, on the student level, on the teacher level, as well as administration level, you think about what can you do in your classroom, in your school, as an administrator to help that transition that teachers, especially new teachers, are going to face. You're dealing with exams. Some have not completed every exam before they were able to do their teaching. Um, and I think some of the things that we can help with is that mentorship that needs to happen between the universities, the teacher preparation programs, if they're like what I went to Teach for America or Teachers Fellow, that are outside of the school that deal in an association with or conjunction with programs, making sure that that pipeline continues to strengthen. So make sure that new teachers get that 1 to 2 years mentoring, and we are constantly going back to make sure they have that support that they need to feel to have that efficacy to do the work. So assist on every level. If it's a administrator, you're helping the teachers, you're giving them, the work they need and that support and guidance. What is the feedback? What's relevant? How can I help assist you to be the greatest you can be today? So helping is on every level. I think as long as we continuously assist one another in that cycle, because it's a cycle when you first start versus maybe after that second year, you feel like you can stand on your own 2 feet. So if you know that a teacher is struggling as a veteran teacher, have them do co-visitations, collaborate with them more, bring them into the loop. If you know you have teachers, even if they're veteran or they're new teachers, make sure those you're keeping them in a professional learning communities, and they're learning from one another, and you're assisting them at every I guess every step they take. So
And
you
I
want
would
your
say,
teachers to be leaders as well.
the doing nothing part in the example that Dr.
Mhm.
Point du jour brought up is you have a new teacher in your building and you're not checking on that teacher.
Yes,
You're not trying
absolutely.
to ally and help that teacher. You're leaving that teacher out to dry, or you're assuming someone else
Mhm.
will take care of it.
Or
That's
you
the
just
doing
say, I had to
nothing.
do it. You'll hear that a lot. I had to learn. So without that idea, I had to learn, and each one teach one, and how we can help one another. So don't just sit by and watch a new teacher struggle, or any teacher. Make sure we're just leaning back, touching back, holding our, the hands of our new teachers, so we can strengthen their confidence, because a lot of it's the confidence. So if you know better, you do better, and that's what we need to do. And as far as, don't just sit by and watch me struggle. Help me.
Right. Janacia, I know you wanted to speak on this. If only you knew doing nothing still doesn't help.
Yes, definitely what was said, the confidence you have to definitely find within to actually speak up for yourself too. I feel like, especially as a teacher, the whole environment is created by us. It's that responsive classroom environment that is created by the teacher. So, in order for you to thrive, especially if you do have an aide or an assistant in there, you have to make sure everyone is a whole. And I use that as an example because, again, from experience, from my first experience now to before, having those microaggressions, not addressing it, reminding people we are on the same team. And I know that goes into another question, so I won't touch on it too much, but
It's okay
reminding
because
we're
we're
all
probably not
here.
going to get to it. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
That we're all here for a reason. And that's something that I start off by saying that, listen, I'm not paid to be, friends. We're here to literally do our job. And that's for our audience, which are our children every day. They're the ones that's going to tell us if we're doing a good job or not. They're the ones that are going to tell us, oh, the energy is not there, the energy is different. And that's something that I've encountered that. And with that being said, not doing anything is not going to solve anything. And I love that saying, closed mouths do not get fed, because that's something that I was born and raised on, that saying. And if you do not create the environment that you wish to live in, as well as you wish to build a community in, it's going to crumble. Your why is going to crumble, your mission's going to crumble, and you're not going to be able to be a highly effective teacher or whatever position you're in the school. And again, every minute of every second of every minute of the day, it matters what you're giving. So again, just speaking and communicating, it allows a greater conversation to happen. And again, that's something that's really needed in this generation right now, is that communication. Because if you can't communicate, which means if you can't speak and you can't listen, you're not going to have it. So again, it's time to speak up and it's time to have those uncomfortable conversations in order to make a better society and community as a whole.
And the doing nothing part of that is not having those conversations and not providing a space where you can have those conversations, or not wanting to have those conversations because you're really not interested in what other people think. So that's the doing nothing part. You know, the bigger doing nothing part from this experience would be that you listen to what people have had to say and you don't share or you don't do anything or you don't adjust or you don't plan to do something. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Perez because I know she wanted to go into breakout rooms. We had many, many more things we want you all to know. So maybe we can do the part 2 or 3 of this, but there is a lot more. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, let's thank the panel. Some snaps, some hands in the chat. Amazing job. And we want to take a few minutes to have you just process what you heard on this evening. So Maya, do we need edit control for which? The survey or for the document?
It looks like we don't have edit access on the document.
Okay. All right. So we'll do that. So we're going to break out into 5 or 6 breakout rooms. Each of our facilitators will be in one of the rooms. And the 2 questions that we would like you all to process and to think about is what resonated with you the most? And what can we do about it? What are some action steps that we can take? So we will work on opening up this document, but in the meantime, just jot down some notes. We hope that you'll stick around for this conversation. We'll be in these rooms for about 12 minutes. And panelists, do you have any questions? We're going to open the rooms. Hi, folks. Can y'all hear me? Andrew, Demella, anything you guys want to share or say?
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Sorry.
Looks like looks like there's 3 of us in here now. So anything resonate with you? Are you in
It was,
education?
yes, I am. Yay!
Hey, Jamela. So are you a
Yay!
student or are you currently teaching?
I'm a student. I'm a student. I
Okay.
didn't, yeah. I'm doing my second fieldwork right now, so I
Uh-huh.
have 1 more to go before I do my student teaching.
Excellent. So in what area are you thinking about doing this?
English.
English, okay. Good, good,
Yeah,
good,
and
good, good. I'm trying to get them a copy of the link so that they can edit.
okay.
1 second. Give me 1 second.
No problem.
Just realized what I did. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna
Okay, no problem.
pop you into another room and let's see. Because we lost our entire group. So, and I need to check in on a couple of groups. So I'm gonna move you into room 1. Seems
Okay.
room 1. Nope, room 5. I'm gonna have you join. See you there. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. So Daniela is assigned to room 5.
especially because like I said, this moment is a pivotal moment for her to understand that you don't have to put up with this, that this is never going to be okay. And it's unfortunately
People are slowly coming back, maybe. We're going to ask if you all would just give 1 minute report out, 1 minute report out of your group, if you can summarize it. So I don't know who was in each group, so I'm just going to call on the facilitators. And if you selected someone to do it for you, call on them for me, please. So we'll start with Angela.
She always starts with me.
Always.
Dr. Jacobowitz, can you share, what you took from that?
Okay, sure. We talked about what resonated for us in our as we were listening. We talked about microaggressions. We talked about feelings of loneliness and those things that really resonated for us from the panel. One thing that I'm really taking away with me was something that we ended with about how important small actions are, and how as individuals we can educate ourselves and do the work ourselves to be able to make small changes, which are as important as big changes, and sometimes maybe feel more manageable and day to day, and those accumulate over time as well. So I would say that that's our conversation. Mrs. Armstrong, if I missed anything, or the other panelists, people who are in there, please add.
That was great.
Thank you very much. You each have 1 minute to do this. So we're going to go to Maya's group. Who did you have, Maya, to do a recap?
I unfortunately did not select someone to do the recap. Emma, if you're comfortable, I would welcome you, but if not, I'm happy to share as well.
I trust your memory better than mine, even though it just happened. So please.
Okay, absolutely. So we talked a lot about names and the way that we come into spaces with intention of acknowledging someone's whole self. So we started off by talking about how names are a really big part of establishing that connection with somebody, because you're able to you're starting off on a good foot of being able to acknowledge a person in their whole self. And we had a couple great examples that we spoke about. One of them being a personal example of being in a classroom, and then another one being an example of kind of just in a different setting. But really just our goal of establishing connections with people from the jump, really trying to get to know people and who they are, and how your name is the first step to that. And so we should be prioritizing understanding and acknowledging people.
Oh, yes. It's all about connection. Let's move to Miss Cara's group, please. You're on mute.
you'd think I'd get this by now. Christina was in our group, and the other individual, I'm not sure if she's still in here. Christina, do you feel comfortable, or I can share?
Sorry, I just had to unmute. We talked a lot about how we approach a colleague or another staff member that has maybe had a microaggression towards a student. I said that I often struggle with that when I see it. I don't always know how to address it in a way that's not going to put the other person in the defensive. And we talked about saying, I experienced your comment in a certain way. This is how I took it. I'm not sure if you meant it that way. And the key thing that I took out of it is if their intent was, the way that I had perceived it, then it's a way to start a more intense conversation on why was your intention um, to make that comment. We've seen how that was harmful to the student, especially like, if, as an adult, I felt it. I can't imagine how the student may have felt it. And also finding a neutral place to have that conversation, um, so that everyone is kind of equal and in a place that's safe.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being brave, Christina, and sharing with us. Janesia's group.
All right. Ashanti, would you like to go or would you like me to go? I don't mind. We were honestly just having a full-blown organic conversation. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. Let's see.
Oh, no, you can definitely share. That's fine.
Oh no, did we lose Janesia? Let me go to Anthony's group. We'll come back to Janesia's. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, so I would like to use that same language that was used previously in terms of our group was really flowing organically in a variety of different ways. Janesia is coming back in. Let's let her go ahead and jump on in, and I'm gonna shut up. But the person that will be speaking for our group is Miss Jenny Leslie, who is Maya's mom, and she's a teacher too. Hey, Maya's mom. But let's before we come to my group, we're gonna go back to Janesia.
Janesia, go ahead.
So sorry about that. So we talked about pretty much starting off at the point of student teaching, being able to look around and seeing people that aren't of color in teaching positions as well as sometimes administrative positions, and how that is a culture shock or a surreal experience not seeing a person of color, as well as that unspoken language that people of color have when they see one another in those positions, just the stare or the, oh, I'm not the only one. And that was something that I felt connected to Ashanti when she expressed that, having that support within that environment of being the only ones, as well as the importance of understanding that you do not have to code switch to be professional. You can be authentically yourself, especially in education. The child needs you to be authentically yourself in order for them to understand who you are as well as your teaching practices. We talked about allies and how Ashanti said, I don't want to be the token. I don't mind educating, but I don't want to be the token. And that's everything we spoke about and more.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be the token. Let's go to Anthony's group. Thank you so much, Janesia.
And I will let Miss Jenny take over, but just real quick, we have a survey form in the chat. Please, y'all, we live and die by these things. We need this stuff, y'all. Please just click on it. It's real short survey form, one of the first links. It just says forms.office. Click on that. Please fill that out. Miss Jenny, go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Dandridge.
So yeah, we had an organic conversation too, and I think I'm old to have too many details left in my brain at this point of the night, but we talked about identity a bit, mixed identity especially. I talked about parenting a mixed child who's going to be a teacher and how proud I am. Noelia talked about being a teacher of color and how sometimes we don't even talk about how important that can be for white students and the impact being made. I remember in 7th grade, I had my first teacher of color. We moved from New York to Maryland, and it was eye-opening. The music we sang, it was wonderful. And I just wanted to put a plug in that often, as I work in a very white district, and I would have loved to have advertised this to my school and said, everyone come on and hear this, because we just don't have the opportunity to talk that much.
Exactly. Thank you so much. It's a joy to have you on here. Dr. Point du jour. How about you?
Hey.
Hey.
So I feel so we need diversity. So I'll just say that in the teaching profession and education, all the above. So I had Mia, I had Michelle, and I had Stephen with me. So anyone can share. We had a great conversation, so anyone can share.
still muted. Am I muted? The one point I wanted to share was a point made about what James, they didn't have the term microaggression in James Baldwin's time, although they had microaggressions. But what James Baldwin said in his work is the problem with being African American or any person of color in this country is when things go wrong in the course of a day, you don't know whether that thing went wrong because you're a person of color or because it was just a bad day. And because of that, that stress, that microaggression adds to your life, makes your life more difficult, actually affects whether you could sleep at night because you don't know whether you got pulled over or whether you didn't get that position because you're a person of color, and that makes it a challenge. And anybody else can join in too, please, from our group.
Not really. We're so glad to have you all here. I want to be respectful of your time, even though it looks like you're going to have a snow day tomorrow. We are so grateful for each of you on this evening. And as Professor Dandridge said, please, please, please take the time to fill out the survey that we have. We have some upcoming events. Did I miss a group? Did I miss a group? Okay. We have some upcoming events. I'm going to have Cara or Maya, if you can talk about the Future Teachers of Color event that's happening tomorrow.
Absolutely. So tomorrow evening, on SUNY New Paltz campus, we are having a professor who is in the Black Studies department. His name is Dr. Shelton Johnson. He is going to be doing a presentation on the state of Black education. So we are very excited for this event. It seems like it's going to be very interesting, and he's a professor at SUNY New Paltz, but he is originally from Alabama, and has taught in the Deep South for a very long time. So it's going to give us a lot of great perspective, and we would love to see you all there.
However, if it's a snow day, it will be postponed. So just if schools are closed, we will probably not be there.
Excellent. If someone can drop in the chat, the website, we have a website full of activities that are coming up. We can't list them all. Another one that's coming up is Where's the Black Church? And there are some local pastors that will be speaking on that. Steve Spicer's pastor is one of them that will be speaking, and there's a couple other people. So that's going to be on February 29th, Thursday the 29th. But we'll send out information to you with the link, and please, please, please take our survey. And I want to thank you for joining us on this evening. God bless. Be safe. Enjoy your snow day.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Pano.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Fill out the form.
Yes, please fill out the form.
Please.
All right.
Fabulous job, family. Fabulous job. Yeah.
Wonderful. Angela dropped off.
I just want to take a second, Dr. Perez and Professor Dandridge. That is my mother, Catherine Breitenbeck. Who
Yes,
has,
that's what he said.
Mama Catherine.
That's what he said. Yeah.
and Dr. Point Dejer, who is also a part of Educators of Color Network. My mom can attest to how much I've talked about this network and how much it's meant to me.
We love your daughter.
Yes, we do. I
Yes,
echo
we
that.
do. Yes, we do.
Yes. But fabulous job, panel. Fabulous job. We will definitely have to debrief, but I can't do it now because I have another meeting.
Take care. Have a
So
wonderful
jot down
afternoon.
notes while it's fresh. Jot down notes and email me while it's fresh. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Love you.
Y'all amazing.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye, Janacia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Great seeing you all.
Bye-bye.